Hello there, Seraphim17 once again. This is my Wonderful 101 100% hard video walkthrough. This is Operation 2. It's called Blossom City Center, and as you already know, the missions are broken up into A, B and C. It is pretty standard throughout the rest of the game, and how it features is A and B are generally levels, and C is a single boss encounter. And there's a couple of things that I don't think I've explained, perhaps as well as I should, so I'm going to go over them now just to give some people an appreciation of exactly what this game is and as far as its difficulty. So, I made a comment on the previous boss video basically saying that I think the lack of checkpoints on the boss encounters is one of the worst parts of this game. I think this game is fantastic, but it is not without flaws, and the flaws that are in it are very minuscule, but some of them are big enough to be to need to be told and to need to be lamented, because you know they're bad, they're really bad, and it's from a company that knows better. And I would love to talk to somebody at Platinum Games and just get an idea of the design philosophy behind some of the choices, because that way you can understand them a little bit more and you can learn to accept them in a much swifter way than I normally do, because once you find a problem, or a problem that you perceive to exist, you then try to find ways around it, and when it's something as fundamental as checkpoints, it can be very difficult to find a way around that, and it can make and break the enjoyment you get out of playing the game. So, I said in the last video, that the boss levels don't have checkpoints, and technically I was wrong. So I'm going to explain this to you. So if you're a new player, or you're somebody watching this thinking, this looks really fun, I want to play this, but I'm intimidated by these difficulties and by how challenging Platinum games normally are, that is something you do not want to worry about. The Wonderful 101 is a game that, outside of its immense learning curve and its quite steep level of challenge, holds your hand in the worst possible way for a person who came to the game for challenge, but in the best possible way for someone who is not so new to this kind of game. And what I mean is, for instance, if I were to die right now, something one-shot killed me, if I pressed continue, I would be back the exact same place I just was when I died, the enemy would be in the same state it was when I died, if I'd injured it, it would still be injured, and I would carry on without much penalty for death, without anything really happening, putting me back in the game, back in the experience. And to some people, that is awesome, because they're back in the game, they're hopefully learning from their mistakes, and they're living to make new ones, and that's that learning curve I mentioned. However, for somebody who plays for rank, the moment you press continue, you ruin the rank. You know, that's it, it's gone. You will never get what you want if you press continue, because it immediately penalties your score. So, you have to say no, and that is where this issue in the Wonderful 101 exists. When you say no, it boots you to the menu, and when you go to the menu, you press continue, and then you go through a couple more menus, and then a loading screen, and then after the loading screen, it's that dice roll of, is this area checkpointed well or poorly? For instance, if I die right now, the choice here would be, do I spawn before I fight these two cubes, just on that stairwell before they spawned, or does it spawn me before I even did that flying sequence in the paraglider? You know, it's very interesting in the way they've been implemented, and I kind of think it's intentional, because Hideki Kamiya is a guy who appreciates one-credit clears on games like Gradius and not Afterburner, sorry, what's it called, Space Harrier, and those games of those generation. He is a shmup fan, hence why a lot of these games have those moments in them, and he knows what it means to only have a single credit and make that single credit last by learning a game, by studying it, and then by showing what you've learned. So, you know, maybe to him, the lacking checkpoint is a good thing, and that's why it's there, to try and, you know, get us into that persevering mindset of just replaying when we make mistakes and improving. And it's a respectable notion. However, we are now in a generation of gaming where checkpoints have essentially pandered us to the nth degree that if we have to play 10 seconds longer than we think we should do, it can become an issue. And somebody left a really derogatory comment on one of my Destiny videos saying, you know, everybody's a critic now, and going on about how, you know, people are bitching about Destiny but they're all still playing it, which you know, there is some validity to what he's saying, to the point he's making. I just think he made it in a very childish and ignorant way, because the notion that everybody is a critic now is bullshit. Everybody has always been a critic. At the end of the day, you and your opinion are the only thing standing in between companies and corporations and any kind of person of influence taking advantage of you, or your skills, or your money. And as a consumer, the last thing you want is people to be taking advantage of your hard-earned money. So when you're looking to get something, if the quality isn't good, it is in your civic duties and your rights to complain about it and get it repaired, get it replaced, get a refund. However, with games, you can still do that, but there comes this notion that, why did you have to do that? These companies had X amount of time to make this game. If there is a glaring problem with it, they have the power now, thanks to the interconnectivity of forums, of Reddit, of Twitter, of all these social networks, to being aware of these issues, and hopefully they come in, they pay a little bit of money to Microsoft, because Microsoft are hungry, and they fix it with a patch. Sometimes they fix things you don't want, sometimes they fix things you do want, you don't really control it, but there is this symbiotic relationship between people taking a critical edge, assessing a game and finding its issues, and the developers acknowledging that yes, that's not how it's meant to work, and fixing their product. It's this evolutionary system we have now, and for better or for worse, it is a progression. So for everybody to just blindly accept what they're given and just put fake politician smiles on and rose-tinted lenses is the death of progress. Because without it, and without the discourse that is generated by things that aren't good, how do we learn to improve? How do we push forward? Well, we don't. We stay the same and we stagnate. And as much as... oh, got fucked then. The general rule here, guys, is wherever the gaps weren't before, they might be on the next rotation. And that one I got hit on is one of those moments where sometimes you guess wrong, because you get very small window to guess right. So this bit can be, you know, a little bit frustrated for somebody going for no damage, but it's one of those sequences that's so kind of irreverent and flashy and silly that it's just a lot of fun. Like this moment here, put on the standard gun and just shoot them before they do anything. If you're wondering why your vehicle's not swapping lanes, you cannot swap lanes while you're holding a Unite Morph, and it's going to get me injured later on in this video. So whenever you need to dodge and move lanes, just disable with X, pop onto the next lane, and then rebuild your piece and start shooting. I personally think the smaller gun is better here, because it's faster. But back on the tangent anyhow. You need to have a critical eye on things, guys, because it's just how the world really works, and there are a lot of people in it that are taking the advantage of people who don't have that critical edge, who just kind of get on with things. And you know, if we just kind of get on with things, things stay the same, and if we're not achieving any kind of progress, then what is the fucking point? You know, we'd still be digging in the sand without language, without art, without anything. And I just think it's incredibly ignorant that people can say things like that. And don't get me wrong, maybe he was trolling, maybe it was a joke and I missed it, who knows? But it's just that thing of, just because you don't think something is important does not mean it's not important. Because importance, much like everything from plastic credit cards to paper money to moral values, all of this is something we created, and we each give it our own inherent value to it, you know? You might be a paedophile who thinks having sex with children is perfectly fine, because that is the value you give that. To somebody else who hates that kind of stuff, which I'm hoping is all of us, you know, they might think it's aberrant and disgraceful and he should be executed. You know, it's all in the value you give things. And as much as I love to devalue things that people love, and I get hours and hours of sarcasm, wit and other silliness from doing so, it's generally always done with my tongue in my cheek. I understand that, for instance, Dynasty Warriors is a game like any other game where there will be some people who like it and some people who hate it, you know? Like sports games, like Call of Duty, like Assassin's Creeds. These games have audiences who enjoy them. That does not mean I don't enjoy taking the piss out of the games and the audiences, because I find it funny. But this I need to talk about. This is your Virgil fight, this is your Genshin fight. I don't really know if there's an equivalent in God of War. Devil May Cry's, you know. In a game where you have a rival, this is the rival fight, and it's one of the most interesting fights in the game. The very first instance here against Vorken, he's in his least challenging mode because he doesn't have all the morphs yet. When you get to the second and the third one, he gets more morphs, he gets more tools to injure you with, and it can become considerably more difficult. A couple of things you have to bear in mind. When he's using a morph, he gets iframes. I'm not entirely sure why this works, because sometimes it doesn't. But every so often during an attack, Vorken has this ability to not take damage, and the hero counter is kind of a contentious issue on this fight. You get a hero dodge, time slows, and then when you start to beat him up, he takes more damage. So, a lot of people don't use it or believe it to be a lesser part of this fight. I disagree. When Vorken summons creatures that are made out of morphs, he will then, while the creature attacks you, he'll attack you with standard attacks, and he doesn't have any wonderful clones with him to shield him. And if you can get a hero counter off of this moment right now, which I'm going to try and do once I've got out of the way of this laser gun. Oh, I tried to bend it back. If you go up to Vorken now and you dodge him, the hero time you get will enable you to hit him. And in that moment, if you have the biggest morph you can make, depending on how big your wonderful team is, you can do maybe 2 to 3 life bars of damage if you know what you're doing. Unfortunately, it's rather tricky to do. Like right now, you see how he's taking no damage from my punches? In the Vorken 2 fight that you're going to see later on, he gets so many iframes. The dude is just living on the edge and there's nothing I can do. And I disagree with it to some extent, but I also understand it. So here comes his buddy. Here's me trying to get some dodges off of Vorken's standard attacks. There's the hero dodge, watch this. Can we hit him? Big hand, watch the damage. Oh, I missed with the second hit, but did you see that? If you can get him in that mode and get hero time off him, and then when it comes out of it, get hero time again, you can feasibly kill Vorken in 10 seconds. Do we get the Ukemi? We do. One of the most enjoyable aspects of the no damage run on this game is you can take damage and skillfully negate it. It's just the smartest thing in any kind of rank game, I think. But couple things to know here. When you're attacking him, you are knocking away his wonderful ones. When you knock his wonderful ones away, he cannot use the big morphs. He then gets very defensive and you put him on the ropes, so to speak. The weapons that are best to use, the sword is great for getting rid of his numbers, the whip is great for both damage and range. The punch, I think, is the best because it's fast and it's damaging, and I really do believe that those moments there when you fight against Vorken, aside from the frame rate problems, they could tweak them slightly, they could balance them in a certain way with battery consumption, how many batteries you get to use, and that could be competitive multiplayer. Because that is when the mechanics on this game truly show themselves to be kind of like a chess match. It is the, you know, the rock, scissors, paper combat of this weapon could counter that weapon could counter this one, and just this on the fly responding to what your opponent does, and I believe it could be something really, really fun. However, Platinum tend to focus on single player experiences because they make games for gamers, and back in the day, folks, the only multiplayer you got was one-on-one competition in arcades, and or chasing high scores, which is another one as well. So they don't generally have too much multiplayer unless you're talking about Anarchy Reigns, which was a game exclusively made for that, and an interesting one at that, which I'm going to be covering a hard walkthrough for that game shortly. So if you're interested in Anarchy Reigns and hearing my thoughts on that title, I will be sharing it over that footage. But here are two of the laser tanks. I'm not doing a very compelling job of killing them, but the tanks are an enemy I struggle with, not because they're difficult, but just because I feel like I stand around too much, waiting for counterattacks when I should be doing something, and it's one of those playstyles that I have to fix. And we get flattened there, so we can't do the Ukemi, which is a bit of a shame. Also, I put a video up yesterday showing the Guts hero counter, which I mentioned in a video, and after some testing I've come to the conclusion that it does pretty much work. However, it's not going to change the game that massively because the hero counter isn't that much of a big deal damage-wise. However, what it does do is it enables you to build the largest Unite morph you can without the battery consumption. I think that's how it works. So, for instance, if you want to build a hammer and you don't have the batteries to do it, if you get a counter with the hammer, a hero counter, and you use the safety of Unite Guts, it can skip that phase of the battery requirements. But once again, this is all kind of ruminations and speculation. I haven't tested it enough to know how it exactly works. It might be placebo, but it seems pretty spot on. Because as long as you press forward as the attack hits you, even if you're in guts, you seem to do that counter. So it's a pretty valuable tool if you can get good with it. And it's also going to help you learn the times for the counters, because the hardest part of any counter is the timing. So thank you very much for watching, and as always, you take care now.